on a random. Coming up on this week's episode of Hip Hop Now Podcast, it's the best hip hop albums of 2019. Let's do it.
Let's get right to the business.
Read these headlines. This album must be gone. This album must be gone.
Classic albums are.
Permanent Hip Hop Podcast. What up, y'all? I am your host, Vegas, and this is Hip Hop Now Podcast, a podcast designed to catch you up on all things hip-hop music and culture that happened throughout the week. Returning listeners, you know the deal. Happy to have you. Glad you hit that subscribe button. Glad you hit that like button. New listeners, glad you're here. Hope you stay. If you want to stay, hit that subscribe button because this podcast is available wherever you listen to podcasts. But more importantly, for the crowd listening, share this podcast with people you know enjoy this kind of content. This is the 2019 top 5 albums of the year. My personal. Now, we do this every year, right? So you can go back in the catalog of podcasts and you can see my top 5 of every year. And the criteria is the same. 1, it's my personal opinion. These are my favorites. I mean, that's why I picked top 5. But my favorites are based off of quality. Meaning, sure, some of these artists may rap better than others. You know, some may have had a different vibe of tracks that the majority of people feel. But my top 5 is really based off of top 5 albums that I felt were the best and also personally the best, meaning they got a lot of play throughout 2019 and will continue to get play, you know, throughout probably 2020 because they're very good albums. Basically, put it this way, every album I pick every year in the top 5 is probably, especially when you have strong years, a potential classic. You know, only time will tell, but there are some albums that came out that were just special. A lot of familiar names in 2019. Let's talk real quick about 2019, you know, because I'm not going to go in depth because I already did a podcast on this. It's on my podcast with the homie Tone. It's called That Time in Hip Hop, where we did a retrospective of 2019 as it relates to hip hop. But I'm going to briefly go over that so you know what the candidates are for my personal top 5. We got albums from a couple of different people. We saw returns from a couple of hip hop groups like Black Moon, like Smith & Wesson, like Gangstar, like Little Brother. You know what I'm saying? We got a couple of returns like Ghostface. You know what I'm saying? Ghostface would put out a solo album as well as a collaborative album with Czarface. You know, we recently saw an album with Sean Price and Lil Fame. And it's a lot of Sean Price bars on there. It's like a Sean Price album with Lil Fame of MOP on the beats. It literally just came out. It's pretty tough. You know what I'm saying? There's new music from Griselda Records, you know, and then that's nothing new. They put in work throughout the years. They released a number of projects. They released their first album on Shady Records, you know, as a collective, and that one is getting heavy rotation for me right now. I mean, it's just dope. You know what I'm saying? So many things happen. You know what I'm saying? We got a dope album from Jim Jones. We just got one that's pretty dope also from Cameron with Purple Haze 2. So there's a lot of music that came out, a lot of reasons to celebrate hip-hop. But there can only be 5. And they're going to be my top 5. And we're not going to waste any time. We're going to get right into it because I got to tell y'all why. This is in no particular order, but the first album on my top 5 for 2019 is Rhapsody's Eve. And this is one of those albums that by the time you hit the third record, you start thinking classic. And it's only the third record. So then you gotta calm yourself down a little bit. Like, that's the rest of the album could be complete trash. Let me chill. Let me listen. And you listen, you go through the whole album, and by the end you just like, man, this was phenomenal. This is like her best work. This is like one of the best albums from a female MC of all time. Arguably the best. Arguably. Not saying it is, but arguably the best. And what makes it that, right? What makes this album so much better than what Rhapsody has released before? Me personally, Layla's Wisdom, which was her first Rock Nation release, which was released a year or two ago, I wasn't the biggest fan of that one, even though I was a big fan of Rhapsody. And I think it was because I felt like on that album, there wasn't much different about her that I hadn't already heard. There was nothing that said, now that they've moved to Rock Nation, the quality of the beats to step up, or, whatever the case may be. She's still working with mostly the same team, but there was nothing different about her music, which is fine, but it definitely didn't deserve a Grammy nod. But when you think about this album, Rhapsody's Eve, Eve is the name of the album for those who don't know. The artist's name is Rhapsody. When you look at this album, first of all, the overall concept of saluting women is just dope in itself, from calling the album Eve to naming the album after prominent women like Michelle Obama and Oprah, and I think Sojourner Truth, right? Yeah, I think there's a couple joints on there. Guest appearances working. But I think what I like the most about this album is not just the beats being tough and the music sound like it's been ratcheted up. Rhapsody is switching her flows successfully. I didn't think she did that a lot throughout her career up until this point. And to do it successfully was the thing that impressed me. It's just a vibe. And it feels monumental. It feels big. If it puts a stamp on her as an MC being special in the game, not just being this MC that represents, pure hip hop, and, we really only flag her music because, we have all this, what Jermaine Dupri would call stripper music. We understand that, nah, this is dope. If this concept was done by a male hip hop artist, we'd be singing the same praises. I would hope so. So this is just a really overall dope album. I'm glad that by the end of 2019, I still felt like it was strong enough to be in my top 5 of the year. Rhapsody, Eve. Check it out if you haven't heard it before. Next up, a dude who is no stranger to my top 5 of previous years, because he just doesn't disappoint. This is Freddie Gibbs and Madlib, Bandana. Now, I didn't really have any expectations one way or the other. I figured it'd probably be dope because their first collaborative effort was dope. But I didn't have any expectations going in, and I knew Freddie Gibbs was solid. I knew Madlib was solid. So I figured we get a solid project. But man, the more you listen to this, the more you realize, and the more I got to say it every time I talk about him, usually talking about him at the end of the year in these top 5 categories, Freddie Gibbs is such an underappreciated MC, and he keeps pumping out dope music. Bandana with Madlib is perfect for me. You know why? Because if you've been listening or following Freddie Gibbs' last couple of projects, which have all been dope, there's a certain vibe with the production, but it's different with him and Madlib. There's a vibe there that's different, and Freddie Gibbs is such an adaptable MC. He adapts extremely well to different types of beats. He switches up his flow where he can sound like a South rapper, meaning, trap rap or whatever. Or he can rhyme over a boom bap beat. He can do whatever. He sounds perfect over these tracks. Perfect vibe, perfect connection together. He's always great with the hooks, man. It's just a dope album, man. And it's one of those albums that get better with every listen. Easily in my top 5. The minute I heard it, I was like, "Whoo, this is up there. This has got to be up there." Now, let me say this regarding these top 5s, right? In my personal top 5. One thing that happens for me personally, like I listen to these albums throughout the year, but I do this rotation thing where, I put new albums on my phone or flag them on a streaming service to listen to, right? And I give them a listen, and the ones I really like are the ones that I continue to listen to. And especially those that I really like, I tend to put, actually buy the album and have it on my phone. So my phone music player becomes like the gauge for my listening habits. Everything that's in there is something I'm listening to. And certain things do come out. Like some of them I take out because I'm like, I'm not listening to that. It's just taking up space on my phone. You know what I'm saying? But I pay attention to what's in my rotation. And what I like to do right before I get to this top 5 category is revisit these albums. So not only did I revisit these albums that I chose as my top 5, but a number of other albums that you can see on the cover, like Big Crit with Crit is here, and Black Milk's Dive, and Benny the Butcher, the Plugs I Met. These are all projects I revisit just to make sure I didn't forget. Because what happens, right? It's a whole year of music, right? And we've had a lot of hip hop come out this year in 2019. And I think a lot of times the stuff that was released early, like Smith & Wesson's The All, we tend to forget. You know what I'm saying? How we felt in that moment, how much we was listening to it because a million other projects have come out since then. And those albums that are released early in the year deserve just as much of a look as albums that came out later, because it's easy to, when you get around the fourth quarter and everybody's pumping out albums, especially when it's good hip hop, you forget what was released. Like, for example, I totally forgot that Nas dropped The Lost Tapes 2. I totally forgot that Common put out an album and a book. And I heard both of these projects, and The Lost Tapes 2 I was on, but I actually liked the Common album. But guess what? After like 2 listens, I never listened to it again because I was just so entrenched by the music that I was enjoying. So let's move on to one that did come out a little bit early for me, but when I say this record was completely in heavy rotation for months, where I literally had to take a break because dope music was being released and I was not even listening to it. I just wasn't. It's 2 Chainz, Rap or Go to the League. This makes my top 5 of the year because there was a point in time where I used to make fun of 2 Chainz, right? I didn't like his name. I really didn't like his previous name, but it's a family podcast, so we're not going to say that, right? And I just found him to be whatever. He trap rapping, cool, whatever. There's nothing there for me. And then 2 Chainz started to do a lot of guest appearances over straight up hip hop tracks. And there was a couple of times where he had the best verse. And I was like, man, is all of 2 Chainz music like these guest verses? Because then maybe I've been sleeping. And in some respects I was. I was listening to a radio single and I was just saying I didn't want to rock with him at all because I wasn't feeling his music. I felt like it was cliche and there was nothing special about him. And the more I would hear him do things, the more I would kind of check for him. So when he had this album coming out this year, Rap or Go to the League, I figured, well, I'm going to listen. Because 2 Chainz is surprising, and I get the feeling that he does both on his albums. He's either going to go completely trap or he's going to go hip-hop with trap. And this album is that. This album is 2 Chainz. I mean, the songs are just, they're just perfect for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, again, he's not killing nothing with the bars. I'm not telling you he's bar for bar better than any rapper that didn't make this top 5. I'm telling you, this is a great album. If you like music, if you like hip hop music, and you don't approach every album, every artist with a checklist of standards that they have to meet, I think you would really enjoy this album. Rap or Go to the League feels like a debut album from somebody. You know what I'm saying? Somebody who played ball, but they could also rap. And they making that decision. And I think this album is really reflective. I like the production. Even going off of that theme of Rap or Go to the League, you know, probably my favorite Cameron album is Sports, Drugs, and Entertainment, which is kind of similar in tone, right? Somebody who played ball, who's nice and ball, could have probably played ball, but went a different route. And there's something to be said about telling that kind of story in different ways throughout the album. So everything's not a story. Everything is not, you know, sit down and listen to my humble beginnings. It's sprinkled in there and has the right production. And what's more important, I think you get to learn a little bit more about 2 Chainz himself, right? Because a lot of times, you know, when you think about hip hop today and certain artists, they're kind of throwaways because they never really talk about anything personally, anything unique to them. They kind of run off and ramble off the same things you hear from every other artist. So besides liking a record because of a hook or whatever the case may be, you don't really have a connection. Can't really relate to their music. Not really. But when you listen to this, I don't care if you straight hardcore boom bap dude, you got to vibe with what's being said. You got to vibe with the hooks and the production, and keeping the track listing to a minimum. I do like that. You know what I'm saying? It's not overwhelming. So 2 Chainz Rap or Go to the League is one of my top 5 of 2019. Real quick, if you don't know, I do another podcast called That Time in Hip Hop with the homie Tony of IntoTheDome.com. And on our latest episode, we decided not to necessarily do a top 5 because that's what you're listening to right now as far as my top 5. But we decided to do a retrospective on the year that is 2019 and how 2019's hip hop releases compared to that of 2018, which was a great year, probably one of the best years in hip hop in a long time. And we not only talk about the albums that were released, we just talking about the year as a whole as far as hip hop and everything that went down. So it's definitely worth your time to just get a overall view of the year and its releases and music and, you know, a couple of other releases that came out and me and Tone's perspective on all of it. That's called That Time in Hip Hop. You can watch the video on YouTube, or you can just subscribe to this podcast. And when you search the podcast Hip Hop Now podcast, you will see that there's another podcast in the same feed called That Time in Hip Hop. 2 more to go, so let's get it done. The next one on my list, so let's recap real quick. To recap, so far, my top 5 of 2019, I have Rhapsody's Eve album, Freddie Gibbs and Madlib Bandana, and 2 Chainz Rap or Go to the League. My 4th pick, and again, in no particular order, Westside Gunn's Fly God is a Awesome God. I'll be the first to admit it. Conway for a long time was my favorite MC out of Griselda before there was a Griselda Records, right? He was the one. He was the one that caught my attention. And I'm talking about before he was shot. Some of y'all know him after the fact. Never really seen him when he wasn't shot, when his face was different. He was nice before. Westside Gunn brought him back. I was like, man, I'm glad Conway's back. But I really couldn't get into Westside Gunn. I don't know. I thought he had an ill voice. But my expectations for his bars was kind of like, and that's because he was standing next to somebody like a Conway that was just a monster with the rhyming. And I just used to think like, well, Westside Gunn he's probably just a voice. It's not much there. I'll wait for the next Conway release. And forget about it. Once we got Benny the Butcher, I was like, damn, he might be my favorite. But Westside Gunn started to grow on me big time. And he doesn't really have to be the best. But I mean, obviously, as an MC, he's going to say he's one of the best spitters of all time. And I wouldn't really fault him for saying that. That's what you're supposed to say. But I think it's that confidence with that voice and that flow and them gun ad-libs that I used to make a lot of jokes about. But combined with them beats, them grimy beats, them grimy bars. When I heard Fly God's an Awesome God, I was like, man, I think this is my favorite release from him. Sure, there was Supreme Blind Tell. That was probably the first one where I was like, yeah, I'm really messing with this one. But Fly God is an Awesome God is, man, from the album cover to the Raekwon intro to the beats. This is a grimy album. And as you can see, I didn't Griselda up my top 5. Kind of felt like I wanted to. I'm not even going to lie. But I knew there was one. I was like, which one was I really playing heavy? All of them was getting a lot of airplay. Obviously, their latest group release is getting a lot of airplay. But, man, Westside Gunn's Fly God is an Awesome God. That joint, I tell y'all, that joint was like every day. Me commuting to work every day with the Beats headphones on. You know, they got extra bass in them joints. No treble. That's not a compliment. Just like every day, bumping that joint from beginning to end. And as much as I love Benny the Butcher and the plugs I met, I was a little disappointed at how many guest appearances on a project that was only an EP. And though that had them guest appearances was on point, they don't detract from that project. Fly God is an Awesome God was like exactly the right amount of grimy boom bap hip hop that I wanted. So just to let y'all know, this is like there's always that one album that's kind of like grimy and I love it. That makes my top 5. And lastly, to round out my top 5, Hip Hop Now podcasters top 5 of 2019. If you from the future, you know what to do. Get your ass out of here. Sky Zoo and Pete Rock, Retropolitan. Sky Zoo is another dude that every time he drops an album, it's considered in my top 5 of the year. He's just that good. And I've said it year to year where he's made it. I think the first time for me personally that he made my top 5 of the year was Music for My Friends. Sky Zoo is a very thoughtful rapper. And when I say that, I mean, you could tell he chooses his words wisely. He puts them together wisely. Like, it's not a lot of wasted space. There's a lot of meaning. There's a lot of substance to what he says in his delivery and everything. And last year when he released In Celebration of Us, you know, you felt that. And that was a more personal album. Retropolitan with Pete Rock was more of an ode to New York City style boom bap hip hop. And I think what makes this special, even though Skyzoo's been releasing heat year after year, what makes this special is the fact that Pete Rock is still making crazy beats. It's a perfect pairing of the two. Obviously, I'm from New York, so I love the whole Retropolitan vibe because it's a New York City vibe. It's a traditional boom bap vibe. Can't say no. I mean, I'm not saying that someone from somewhere else can't enjoy it just as much as I can, because that is not the case. But I feel like, man, this album was everything it was advertised to be. Again, when I say boom bap, sometimes you get boom bap rappers and they're like a one note. You know what I'm saying? You know what's coming next. You know what they're going to say next. You know what the beats are going to sound like. Pete Rock finds a way to craft beats that don't sound like the same track or don't sound predictable. But they all boom bap. They all head nod, you know what I'm saying? Drums hit you and you already instantly into it. And then Skyzoo's flow, he just knows how to flow over tracks. He knows when a track is dope. Bar for bar, just going in. Doing tracks with Griselda Records. Perfect pairing. It's just a dope album, y'all. And I think personally, if you're a fan of traditional hip hop, and maybe you get disgusted when you turn on the radio and it's trap record after trap record, mumble rapper after mumble rapper, sing-songy rapper after sing-songy rapper, and there's really no substance there. One or two tracks kind of get you going because they just sound good, but there's nothing for you to really hold on, no meat in the sandwich of hip-hop music the way you knew it. These top 5 that I named today are like a starter kit for you to come back, right? Like Detox. Let's say you either did one or two things, right? You either just got with the new stuff and that's all you listen to, but a part of you misses what hip-hop used to be. Or you a person who said, you know what? Everybody who's out now is trash. I must be getting old. Hip-hop was a young thing. I'm out. Cut yourself off from the force. A little hip-hop Star Wars reference. But I'm here to tell you, this is like your little detox come back home list of my top 5 for 2019. That being Rhapsody's Eve, Freddie Gibbs and Madlib, Bandana, 2 Chainz, Rap or Go to the League, Skyzoo and Pete Rock's Retropolitan, and Westside Gunn's Fly God is an Awesome God. That's going to do it for me for this week. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Vegas World INC. And please know, this podcast is absolutely available wherever you listen to podcasts. All you got to do, whether you're using Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, iHeart, Spreaker, Spotify, all you have to do is type in the little magnifying glass on your app, wherever you go. Type in the words Hip Hop Now Podcast. You see the cover. Hit that subscribe button and get locked in to years of content regarding hip hop, music, culture, news, and perspectives. Until next time, y'all. See you on the other side, 2020. I'm Vegas, and I am not a critic. I'm a fan. Peace.